Hey y'all, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Morgan, and here we do all things spooky, but specifically for the month of February, I did daily uploads of nothing but what you guys sent into me, and it has been a terrifying experience. It's been horrifying. These stories are so scary. Are you guys okay? Are you okay? I'm gonna continue doing this 5 days a week from here on out because I love these stories so much. So Monday through Friday, we're gonna get stories that you guys send in to me, and Saturday and Sunday, we're gonna alternate between different things that we do on this channel. So I'm super excited about that. But please check out the description below for where to send in your stories, and you'll also find other social medias and podcast episodes on there. Without further ado, let's get into these stories. I've been a big fan of yours for a bit now, and I love everything about your channel. Your pets, your husband, how chill y'all are when you tell stories and stuff. Well, thank you. But anyways, I have a few stories to share. I love all stuff strange and unusual, so I usually try seeking those experiences, usually bringing people who are hesitant. The things that always scare me the most is whenever it's unsolicited and without merit. This happened around a year ago. Christmas had just passed and I was hanging out with my youngest cousin, 9 at the time. She was showing me her gifts and she handed me this square box with a disco ball at the top. We hung out a bit more until it got dark. Once the sun had set, we closed the curtains and hung out in the cubby I made above my closet. She was scared looking into the dark void that was my room, so I grabbed a pillow and put it in the entryway. A few minutes had passed and the disco ball was on and we were jamming to some music when she got a bit hot, so we tucked the pillow and looked outside to get some air. Almost immediately she pops back in, readjusting the pillow, and looked at me as if she had done something. I of course laughed a bit, but her face remained serious. She told me she saw a woman out there, looking as if she were lost. Personally, I've never seen anything, but I'm more of a feeler. The room was normal. I felt no emotions or energy changes, but of course I believed her. I don't want to be one of those people who doesn't believe kids. So I calmed her down, we listened to music more, and she eventually built up the courage to peek back out. I provided my flashlight, and she said the lady was still there, but the flashlight attracted her attention, and she smiled up at her. I didn't get a chance to look because the closet suddenly began violently shaking. I lifted her up onto me just in case the boards underneath us fell. We sat there for a few seconds holding each other until the closet ceased and a singular board under us was being hit, as if someone or something was trying to break the board. I was hanging out at my aunt's house with the older of my cousins, 13, and we were separately on our devices. It was around 2 a.m. and we heard whistling. We kind of looked at each other like, did you hear that? Was that your phone? Before looking at my aunt's room where we heard the noise come from. After a few seconds of silent listening, we eventually laughed it off and got on our devices again, our volume lower. Soon I'd forgotten and was listening to a song I loved, and I whistled the tune. I couldn't sing because it was in another language. She turned to me as if I were betraying her, before freaking out and whisper yelling at me that I completed a tune she heard from her aunt's room, making me freak out. We had no chance to calm down, and we heard footsteps circling the house. Once I cleared my mind up a bit, I started connecting the dots and asked my cousin for a lighter she kept on her before lighting a candle to make sure everything completely stopped. I was again hanging out at that same aunt's house with the oldest and youngest, and we were doing an exercise I made to help them appreciate everybody since there were some rough feelings going on. Some emotions were brought up, and in an attempt to cheer the youngest, she wanted me to lift her to the ceiling. Of course I obliged and felt angry, like not the room, but anger at myself. All of a sudden I hear banging in the kitchen, and I saw a shadow and felt as if I were being pushed. I grabbed the two, moved them to the corner of the room. It was late, around 3. It was the first time in 6 months since I had been there with the oldest and the middle cousin. Middle, I guess, heard some things I'd gotten into, probably also heard my aunt criticize the stuff I do. So she wanted me to turn the Vox on. After a few minutes, the oldest turned toward the window and kind of stared. After a few seconds, she told me her dead ex was staring back at her. She knew it was her. The middle looked and kind of stared too. I looked and saw nothing, so I kind of chilled and called my ex, who was about the same as me, except she's a badass, speak a dead language in German. The oldest and her did a weird ritual, and I hung out with them, with the middle, as they did. After I said what I usually did after these, basically don't follow the kids, stay here or come with me, they went home the next day. A few weeks after that, I smelled dead fish, and every time I was on a call with my friend, there'd be something. They'd hear something. Ooh, the dead fish smell? Gross. Alright, next story. I'm from Louisiana, and I really enjoy your videos and wanted to share some sleep paralysis stories of my own with you and your community. I have 3 stories. They're rather short, but kind of climactic. The Dream Mimic. This was back when I was a freshman in high school. For some context, our morning routine consisted of me and my little brother waking up at 6 and eating breakfast in front of the TV, then falling back asleep on the couch until our mom woke us up for school. This morning was different. We ate our breakfast as normal while watching Cartoon Network. I fell asleep and started dreaming. I was in a haunted hotel that I owned, offering rooms to thrill seekers or customers who had nowhere to sleep for the night. My best friend in the dream told me that he had nowhere to stay and needed a room. Have I read this story? It sounds familiar. I'm going to read it anyways. because it reminds me of the hotel episode in an American Horror Story, and I want to read it. Anyways, the only room I had left was the most haunted and one in the hotel. Reluctant, I sat up in the room and returned to my room to sleep. Once I closed my eyes in the dream, I woke back on the couch. Across from the couch was my best friend in the bed from the hotel. He looked different, though, as if his colors were drained and he was painted. He ran across the front of the couch and was behind me, and my little brother was laying. I could only move my eyes as I saw his face twist and distort into a demonic smile with a face that was not his own. Immediately, I shut my eyes and heard demonic laughter. I started to pray, and his laughter turned into screams as my movements returned to me. I swear that sounds so familiar. I don't know if I've read that or not. The next story is Rushed. This one is rather short and takes place my senior year in high school. After a long and stressful day at school, I get home, place my bags down, and pass out on the floor of my room. I don't particularly remember having a dream this time around, but I do remember waking up rather disoriented and hearing ringing in my ears. The way I was situated, I could see underneath my bed. While disoriented, I don't realize I couldn't move. When I finally realized what was happening, a demonic figure rushed at me from underneath my bed so incredibly fast that I could barely register what it looked like. After it rushed me, it disappeared, and my ears were filled with this deep demonic laughter once again. After the laughter subsided, I was able to move again. It moved me. This one takes place in either the same week or month of the previous story and took place again in my senior year of high school. After another stressful day of school, I come home and immediately fall asleep in the middle of the floor, sprawled out. I woke up to the feeling of being moved. When I opened my eyes, I could tell I was slowly being moved underneath my bed. I started to freak out and realized that I couldn't move. I could tell that if I went underneath that bed, something horrible was going to happen. Feeling helpless and wanting to scream but not being able to. I started to cry silently. All of a sudden, a bright light flashed from underneath my doorway and a figure entered the room. I couldn't see their face, but when they placed their hands on my chest, I was able to move again. These are some of my sleep paralysis stories. Thank you so much for reading them if you decide to, and I hope you have an amazing day. Huh? I swear, does anyone else remember me reading that first story? None of the others sounded familiar, but that one particularly did, and I don't think I've read it, but I read it. I swear I've read it. This story is from a few years ago. I was going to bed at my dad's house, which to my room there was this really long, slim hallway. I was fully awake and had my TV on, which was by the door. I always shut my door, and when I head to bed, because the hallway creeped me out at night, something opened it. It was this long, slender, pitch-black figure, no light illuminating off of it. Me and this figure locked eyes for a few seconds, then it just backed up and shut my door. I was fully awake during this and cannot imagine anything. I went to sleep after that. I asked my dad in the morning if he went to my room last night, and he said no. I don't know any history of the house, but it just intrigues me. I've never seen it again, but the fact that it managed to open my door and shut it is what creeps me out. If you read this, thank you. The way you described that made me think of Slenderman, and I don't like that. I'm not saying it was Slenderman, it just made me think of it, and I don't like that. Alright, next story. I hope you're doing well, and I've really enjoyed your theme this month of reading viewer stories. This happened to me earlier in the summer of 2024. My great aunt and great grandmother on my mother's side lived in why am I saying where people live? Why was that something I was gonna do? They live in Ontario. Oh, I have no issues with you mentioning this, so I short-circuited for nothing. They lived in Point Perry, Ontario. Point Perry is well known to be haunted. The story takes place in a restaurant in Point Perry called the Jester's Court. In 1857, a structure was built for a local Freemason named Jason Good. There's also a Freemason building across the street from the now restaurant. Good opened a small hotel on the property in 1871, then later burned down. A new structure, a house I believe, was built in 1914 for a man named James Carnegie. His flour mill burned down in 1902, and he quickly rebuilt and remained a vital part of the community. I'm not sure if that means he turned his new house onto the Jester's Court property into a new flour mill, or if it was just a home he occupied. Carnegie died in 1921. I believe Carnegie's home was turned into a restaurant after his death, and was later bought by someone else who turned it into the Jester's Court. It's been difficult to find the historical information of the building and property, as menu and location are always the first things that come up when Jester's Court is typed into a search bar. The Jester's Court is said to be haunted by a woman in a blue dress who is known to give employees hugs and is often sighted at the top of the staircase. There's also an older woman with an opposite approach at being noticed who still shelved items to throw at employees. There's also said to be a little boy and a little girl. There's actually a restaurant called the Greenbrier. I need to do a video on it. In Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and one of the things that the ghost there does is throw items off of shelves at employees. Why is that so common in restaurants? Supposedly, the most haunted place in this restaurant is the upstairs women's bathroom. It's notorious for being unnaturally cold, even though it's a very small space and the restaurant has been struggling to heat it for years with little effect. Reports of the faucet turning on while an occupant is in the stall alone in the bathroom are not uncommon. Also, one of those stalls will sometimes stick, trapping the occupant inside. That is my nightmare. I believe something similar happened to a friend of my great aunt's. Rather than the stall door sticking, the bathroom door itself was stuck. It's an old door, not much of a door at that, rather a glorified cupboard door. It's much thinner than a regular door and has no turning handles or locks, only secure knobs for opening. Well, that door wouldn't exist if it locked me in there. Bam. I mean, you should see me if an elevator just halts a bit too much. I about Kool-Aid man it every time. I hate elevators. It works on a spring to keep it shut. I believe there's a hook and an eye latch on the inside. It was not in use at the time of this incident. Now I want to tell you a bit about my family. During this story, we, my mother's parents, so my maternal grandparents, and my mother's sister, my aunt, and myself, were going down to Port Perry, to see my grandpa's mom and sister, my great-grandmother and great-aunt, who lived together. Due to some past circumstances, I never got to know my great-grandmother and great-aunt when I was young, so I jumped at the opportunity to see them recently. It was so odd meeting them. They should have been strangers to me regardless of our blood relation, but I've never felt so seen and whole as I was when I first walked into their home. I remember thinking, oh, this makes sense. I never really felt related to my family that I see often, but getting to sit down and converse with my great-grandmother and great-aunt, I realized I did identify and see myself in them. That's somewhat important later. My great-aunt, who I'll call C, has been going to this restaurant for a while, partially because it was haunted. She's always been very interested and well-versed in paranormal and supernatural phenomena. She booked us a reservation at the restaurant for my birthday after learning how interested I was in it. I definitely get that from her, and I was so excited. So the time comes and we all head to the restaurant. We get to our seats, sit down, and C looks at Mom and I, and we've definitely been the most excited out of the group, and says, "Do you guys have to use the washroom?" We both say yes and jump up. So we head to the stairs to the woman's bathroom, and I've never been so happy to be a woman in my life. We open the door and thankfully no one's in there. It's a very narrow space, and I think I walked in first. I took about 4 steps until I was in the middle of the bathroom and felt so dizzy and fuzzy. My vision faded for a second. My hearing went buzzy like a radio station when you drive under a bridge. My first thought was, I bet that's what walking through a ghost feels like. My aunt, who I'll call A, walked past me to the end of the bathroom, and I asked her if she felt that, and she said no. I told C, and she thought it was interesting, and I asked her to come and stand where I was standing. She said she couldn't feel anything, but had no doubt I did. Anyway, we take a brief look around, and then we look to the second floor. There wasn't much that stood out in my mind. We go back downstairs and wait to order. I notice the light above us is flickering, and I look at C and say, "Did you see that?" She says, "Yeah. It looks like something followed us down." I think she was right. The entire time we were there, the light above our table flickered on and off, only ours.
I'm sorry. I can hold that one. Sorry.
After our meal and after we ordered dessert, C heads back upstairs to use the washroom. I waited a few moments deciding whether or not I should go up. I stood and said, "I'll be right back," to the rest of the family at the table. I walk into the washroom and C is the only one in there. I call out to her and tell her I'm here with her so she would know the footsteps were mine. She comes out to wash her hands and I walk past her and through the same spot that had me feeling fuzzy before. I'd completely forgotten about it and only remembered when I got the exact same feeling walking the second time. It was only that one spot. I asked C to stand there again and she did, still feeling nothing. Then I decided to ask if anyone was in here. That's when the light fixture above the sink that has 3 bulbs laid out horizontally above the mirror, C saw one of them flicker. So I said, "If anyone's in here, can you make the middle light flicker? Just the middle light?" It did. Faintly. C and I went back and forth doing this for a bit, asking questions and getting responses with the flickering of the lights, whether it was the first, middle, or third. We asked if it would make the middle light flicker, only the middle light would flicker. We asked it to make the first light flicker, and only that one would. I think we figured out it was a little boy who passed there, possibly in a fire, maybe tuberculosis, who was stuck in the building but was happy and safe. Just then, I noticed how cold my butt and left thigh were. I was standing closest to the door directly in front of the mirror and lights. C was on my right. I also noticed my left hand, which was by my side, had gotten extremely cold. The chill was from my waist down, child height, and only my left side. Just then, A walks in. "Hey, we didn't know where you guys went." I just remember thinking that was weird. C and I both stood up from the table and had gone up the stairs at relatively the same time. We both said we were going to the bathroom, and just then, A squints and covers her eyes. Holy, those lights are bright. How can you even stand to look at them? The same lights that had been on and hadn't caused A any issues when she came to scope out the bathroom for the first time. C and I explained what we were doing, but activity had died down quite a bit after A walked in. We headed back downstairs, and as A said, the rest of our family was worried about us and where we had gone. C and A left the bathroom. Before I left, I said, "It was very nice to meet you. Thank you for talking with us. I really appreciate you. But you're not allowed to attach yourself or follow us from this restaurant." When we sat back down at the table, my grandma said, "We had no idea where you guys went. We sent the waitress outside to look for you." I was still lost in thought about what I just experienced with the lights and didn't think too much about that, though I thought it was weird. My great-grandmother asked us what happened. She also believes in the paranormal like her daughter, C. My grandma and grandpa, C's brother and wife, are very Baptist Christian, and we try to shut down paranormal talk. My grandma S did so like any other time the topic came up, and I ignored her. I turned to my great-grandmother and began telling her what happened. The lights above us flickered again, and every time I told her a fact we'd learned, a little boy passed in the building, trapped here and safe but not unhappy. The lights above us would flicker, punctuating each statement, as if to confirm that that is what he had told us. Anyway, we left shortly after this. I asked S where she thought I had gone. "I don't know," she said. "We didn't even see you get up." This was really weird. I was right beside of her. How do you not see me get up and say, "I'll be right back"? Anyways, I wonder if perhaps I'm clairvoyant. I've always felt more than anyone else, and I also wonder if I inherited that from the woman of my maternal grandmother's side. They have both had experiences. In fact, my great aunt and great grandmother, her mother, and grandmother, my great grandmother's mother, all had an experience when they saw a dark, demonic figure walking at the foot of their bed when they couldn't move. They didn't tell each other their experiences till years later, and that's when they found out that they all had the same experience. C thinks it happened on the same night, too. C said that she's able to see spirits, and she always has. Just them passing through. The house they live in now has a lot of activity. It's built out of wood and by the river that flows the wrong way, south to north, I believe. This stream also flows past their house and the Jester's Court. C says because the house is made of natural materials, spirits are more attracted to it. She often sees things passing through. I want to go there so badly. Okay. Add it to the notes. You can open your drink. Add it to the notes. We're going.
And what's where?
You're going. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. That is all the stories, and we will talk to you next time. Please send me stories.